the Sports Betting Network.
Follow the money.
That's what I always say. You always follow the money.
Yeah.
This is Follow the Money with Mitch Moss and Paulie Howard on VSiN.
Good afternoon and welcome in. It is Follow the Money here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. Jonathan Von Tobel, Mike Palm with you today. We will be filling in just for today. Mike will be back tomorrow. Mitch Moss makes his return from vacation tomorrow. And we have a good show on tap. We will cover pretty much everything here on the program. Will Hill will be with us in 30 minutes, go over everything college basketball related. Will, a competitor, by the way, in the Circuit College Hoops Championship? Invitation? Challenge? Something like that. Yeah, whatever.
Tim Murray's. I think you have to put out. He's now suddenly put his name on top of this, like humans isn't involved. But
that is. Oh, really?
Was
he doing it on
I mean,
Saturday?
he's tweeting everything. He's making videos about it.
Tim, not one to shy away from the limelight, but he will not be with us. And then we got some pretty good guests with us, too. Nick Alberga and John McKechnie are going to be with us in the 3 o'clock, 6 p.m. hour. But, Mike, I'm excited to be with you. One, because you and I don't really get to work together too often. The other, though, is I feel like watching sports media today and our network, I guess we are contractually obligated to complain about the NBA All-Star Game at the start of a show. So go ahead.
Well, I don't have to complain about it because I didn't waste 1 second on it.
You and I both.
I didn't turn the TV on to it yesterday.
That's right.
I saw a tweet, LeBron not going to play. I felt nothing. I saw bits and pieces of Saturday. Wimbayama was cheating. I had enough.
Yeah, because look, it's college basketball time. Like, this is what we're getting ready for here, folks. And so that's where I wanted to start because we had such a big weekend of college basketball. We'll get to, by the way, the Four Nation final that we are going to talk about because we do have a Four Nation face-off. We do have the finally set. Canada and Team USA will have a rematch with one another. But over the weekend, we had a massive weekend for a lot of these bubble teams. Every single one of them almost competed with each other, and we finally have the updated odds to make the NCAA tournament for these teams that are finally posted. You have to wait till all the bracketology is updated. But after you watched over Saturday, I feel like there was a lot of impactful games, but a lot of these teams that are floating in the fringes of the bubble had some pretty big games, including these ones trying to force their way into the picture. For example, K-State, one of the hottest teams in the country, goes into BYU, and you're thinking, all right, cool, they're playing at a top 10 level. Everybody keeps talking about the metrics. Get absolutely smoked by BYU, playing their first game up in altitude for a while. They're on the Utah swing. We'll take on the Utes a little bit later. Now K-State, minus 245 to miss out on the field of 68 at this point right now. But that's just one of the many teams that we saw over the weekend really impact their bubble status.
You know, this is unfortunate because I was trying to make the argument for Drake. And they had to win yesterday, which they didn't do. But an argument for Drake that if they had ran the table and had lost their conference championship game, they would be an at-large team. I think Lenardi had him on the 11 line going into the weekend, and he had Iowa State on the 3 line in the same bracket, which they could have had a second-round matchup. But they lose the game, and so what I was going to say, though, is the Kansas State loss doesn't help them. They need Kansas State to do as well as possible and be a tournament team because that's really the game they circle on their resume as their best out-of-conference win.
Yep. Yeah, and I think when you look at all of these, too, and you finally see some of the updated numbers for these teams, one of the things that obviously is the most interesting aspect for all of these is how many SEC teams are going to make it in. And these fringe SEC squads that we're talking about, Georgia, for example, competes, and I'm in the circa college basketball hoops challenge, college hoops challenge. And Georgia is one of my 5, and you're feeling pretty good because they're up by 3 at the half, get absolutely smoked in the second half by Missouri. 87-74 was the final score there. That score actually wasn't even really indicative of how that went. On Friday, Georgia was a $1.88 favorite to make it into the field of 68, but you look at it now in the updated numbers, they are now favored minus 128 to not make it into the postseason. And that was the other part about this is would 14 of the SEC squads actually make it into this bubble? And it's going to tie into some of these 1 seeds, which we'll talk about a little bit later because we saw number 1 and number 2 go at it this weekend as well. But these teams are all going to cannibalize each other in the SEC. And these fringe SEC squads, when you're looking at them, Vandy, who is now a very solid favorite to make it in, minus 320, compared to the price that was about minus 255 on Friday. These teams are all going to cannibalize each other, and I feel like I'm going to bet against maybe a couple SEC squads to not make it because they're going to start to lose these games. They're going to beat each other.
And you know, frankly, the Big Ten and the Big 12 as well. These teams that are on the bubble are going to be playing each other. I do think, though, you have to remember if you go back and try to compare to last year, there were 6 bid stealers in conference tournaments last year. That's an abnormally high number. You think if it would normalize, that number is going to be more like 3, maybe 4. So maybe some more of these fringe teams can get in. I mean, the power ratings of these SEC schools are incredible, but are you really only going to get 3 from the ACC? I have 3 tickets against North Carolina getting in. So
Yeah.
I don't want them. Right, they're out of conference is horrible.
Terrible.
It's horrible. I mean, they beat Syracuse, but they didn't cover the number either. I couldn't believe the number was that big, 8.5. So I'm hoping against them. I have some nice tickets on them, high as 25-1, not to make it from early in the year,
Really?
and I've continued to bet it down, even all the way to 5-1. And yet they still always hang around this line here. So Missouri's a really good team. I mean, I think Missouri's a very good team. When you see that they put these first 16 seeds out, and where Texas A&M is ranked,
Yep.
and you think about Texas A&M, it's like the 5th or 6th team out of the SEC. And they have them as a 1. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, so the bracket preview that we got over the weekend, your 4-1 seeds were Auburn, Alabama, Florida, and Duke. So you have 3 SEC teams manning the 1 seeds for the bracket. You look at, again, some of these other teams, like you mentioned, Texas A&M, a 2 seed. When you're talking about the SEC squads, Kentucky, who lost to Texas over the weekend, a 3 seed there. Tennessee, a 2 seed, which needed a ridiculous comeback against Vandy over the weekend to survive that matchup. That is a squad, too. Humans and I have talked about this a couple of times. You can miss me with Tennessee. The overt reliance on the 3-point jump shots, the fact that they can't really get inside consistently. The Kentucky matchup was, I think, eye-opening. That's one of the worst, actually, statistically, the worst SEC defense, right? They are abysmal inside defending the rim. Couldn't get inside against them at all. You got blitzed by them, too. Tennessee is one of those squads that we're talking paper tiger if you're going to put them at that 2-line, 3-line, whatever. They're no matter where they're at.
We lost, both Paul and I lost with them Tuesday night
Yeah.
at Kentucky.
Yep.
Because that's what we said. This is the worst rim defense. Tennessee should feast on this team and really never got to the front in that game. You can hope they get a 2 seed and then fade them in the NCAA tournament.
Right.
Fade them like, places put out all of these yes-nos now. Will they make the Sweet 16? Will they make the Elite 8? You can fade them as they won't make the Elite 8.
Yep.
Right?
Well, I mean, sometimes just index props, which is kind of the bothersome part about it. You could find a couple of these spots, like I think FanDuel's got the yes-nos on these. Will they make the actual tournament field of 68 that I'm looking at right now for the updated numbers? A lot of them, though, you just hang up the index. It's like, we'd like a piece of the no on some of these teams. And you can bet both ways for these. I thought the other team, too, that was worth discussing here as we're looking at it is that Texas team, because the way that these SEC teams are powered, like you said, they're going to be really high up there. They get a win. The spot of all spots, right? Kentucky goes out, like we're talking about, takes out Tennessee, shoots 50% from beyond the arc against the Volunteers. They continue to shoot at a really high clip. It was like the variance game going up against each other there. Texas could not hit an outside shot to save their lives over the course of a couple of games in an SEC play. Kentucky was doing it, and they finally take them down. I feel like we're going to get to, I keep telling this to Matt, we're going to get to the NCAA tournament, and we're going to get to the Elite 8, and it's just going to be like the Big Ten from the last few years, where we spent all this time talking about how great the conference is, and maybe we're talking about like 2 teams making it as far as the Elite 8 or the Sweet 16.
Now the South Point has a prop. Right? They opened the field versus the SEC. The highest the SEC ever was plus 150 in that number. It's now a pick 'em.
Oh.
Straight minus 110 both ways. If I told you have to wager $1,000 on that prop, are you taking the SEC or the field?
I'll take the field,
You will.
especially now that it's starting to climb down. I mean, when you're talking about the fact that I'm going to get obviously Duke, the Big 12 teams that are mixed up in there, some of these pretty talented Big 10 teams as well. I'll take my chances with some of these. And again, I think you can. They're very good when we're talking about these SEC squads, but I think you can look at a lot of them and start to poke holes in what they are as some of these teams look. Look, we saw Alabama defensively have some really big issues over the weekend against Auburn. We've talked about Kentucky's defense. Texas A&M, I think, is a very inconsistent offensive team, relying on generating second-chance opportunities as opposed to getting first shots. We can go through the list, I think, and really knock down some of these teams. In fact, you brought up Missouri. I think when you're looking at, all right, who's the third best team in the SEC, I think you make a case it's Missouri.
I think they're very, very good. They're competitive in every game. And they're a better shooting team than some of these squads. Would you look at a team like a St. John's? I listened to Pitino's press conference yesterday, about, shooting 35, 38, 55% and still being able to win games because they're so good defensively and create extra possessions. You ever look at a team like that can win without shooting well?
So Humans convinced me. I do have him at 60-1 to right, because he gave me the sweet spiel, and I was like, you know what, I'll add it. I need some more. But the second I bet it, and I've watched them a little bit more, the shooting does bother me. Like you're shooting under 30% for the season. That's abysmal. And when you get into some of these games where you're going to start to trail, I mean, we saw it a little bit in the Villanova game, right? It was a tight game, but Villanova ends up shooting the ball relatively well, and they end up losing that game to them. By the way, that was like an outlier shooting performance for St. John's, and they end up losing that. But can you trust them in these neutral court settings to constantly play such a brand of lockdown defense where the math game that you're going to be behind every single game you're going to be able to overcome?
I say that about A&M, which my friend Bill Cramsey has them at 80-1 from early January. And I try to make the argument against Houston, but I watch them, and they do this on a whole nother level, right? Like they go into the McHale Center, which you could say is a top 5 hostile atmosphere, and dictate the pace of that game to Arizona.
Yep.
And, I mean, I'm not a big Tommy Lloyd fan, but I don't know how you can go in and dictate on the road. And they played right into their hands, and they just wore them down. I mean, Arizona led mostly, but they just wore them down and wore them down and wore Caleb Love down that entire game.
That was an awesome game. We will see Arizona later tonight, by the way. Interesting spot against Baylor. Hey, sports betting, it never slows down, folks. That's why we're going to go, and neither should you. With the NBA and the NHL in full swing, the PGA Tour underway, March Madness about to tip off, MLB opening day around the corner. Action never stops. Start betting smarter with a VSiN Pro subscription. For as little as $9.99, you're going to get the daily email, all the plays from hosts and their guests, expert analysis, deep dive stats, and more. Don't place your bets unprepared. Get full access today for only $9.99 at VSiN.com/subscribe. Mike Palm, JVT, when we come back, a little bit of hockey as we do have the final set in the Four Nations face-off. USA will take on Canada, but they have a game left. So what can we expect for the Americans? We'll discuss that next here on Follow the Money.
Time. There's nothing more valuable. It's what drives everyone to make the most of every moment. We celebrate living large in the now. In a city where time disappears, we create experiences that electrify the soul and memories that will last forever. We go big, we go all night, and here, everyone is invited. So get loose and get loud.
This is Circa. You'll have the time of your life.
So, Paulie, have you had a chance to read the VSiN Daily yet?
Yeah, came in at 3 a.m. What's Bill doing up that late?
Well, rumor has it starts off with a 12-hour meditation session.
Then he just pours himself over film and live TV, really focusing and taking it all in. Bill's in with the biggest insiders, talking trade secrets, strategies, the whole nine, absorbing the info.
And then and only then can the writing process begin.
In Las Vegas, Bill's late night becomes your early morning. Wake up to the very latest betting insights in your inbox with the VSiN Daily. Sign up for free at vsin.com/newsletter.
Elevate your sports betting game with VSiN's exclusive betting splits. Stay ahead with real-time market trends and track bet percentages on any matchup. Then uncover the edge by comparing them to the amount of bets placed to find out where the sharp money is headed. Upgrade to VSiN Pro to access betting splits, live odds, line moves, power ratings, and in-depth game analysis. Go to vsin.com/pro to join VSiN, the sports betting network.
This is Follow the Money on VSiN.
Four nations colliding, going at it on the ice. It's been a good product so far, right? The Four Nations face-off.
The game Saturday night, it might have been the best hockey game outside of a Stanley Cup final or a Game 7 since the 2012 Olympic gold medal match. I was at Bar Canada.
Sure.
We had plenty of Canadians show up.
I was going to say, good setting.
It's, I had to go to 90 on our volume for people to be able to hear. And usually it's only Super Bowl that we have to go that loud for.
Right.
It was a great John, it was a confluence of things that allowed that to be that game what it was, right? It can never happen again. One, it had the perfect setting in Montreal. Okay, the Bell Center, there's no better place for it. Two, it had to be a relatively meaningless round-robin match. They're not doing that in the finals, taking major penalties off the start and orchestrated fights. They're not doing it. Three, you had to have the geopolitical atmosphere of Trump, all right, and the tariffs. Four, they treated the Americans like crap all week up there in Montreal. Five, they booed the anthem once again, right? Six, you had to have NHL officials on this. I mean, if you had Olympic officials and Olympic, they might be suspending these guys from international play for months, right? You have to have somebody that understands the context of it. And so all those things had to conspire to that moment. And I mean, that the first period was just a wild frenzy for 30 minutes, right, of the fighting. And
3 fights in the first 9 seconds, yep.
And the McDavid goal. I mean, all of it was just incredible. And at the end of the day, I think America wins, which is relatively meaningless because they're going to play again for all the money in Boston on Thursday night.
Right. So before we get to the rematch, really quickly, then what do we do with the Americans today, right? Because that's the interesting aspect of this. They take on Sweden. They opened up as a $1.95 favorite here. Do they lay down? Do they not care? Do we sit guys? I mean, how do you handle a game like this when you have your matchup set and a big one at that, right? Like that's you would assume you're going to be pretty focused on what that is.
They're going to rest guys. They're resting Hellebuck. Obviously, Ottinger's getting the start tonight. Where Bennington now are going to play 4 straight games, I would assume, although we'll ask Nick Alberga at 3 o'clock Pacific, what would you do if you were John Cooper? Would you turn to Aiden Hill here? I was really interested. Now, I laddered up Canada in that game, and I felt pretty good up 4-0 with 6 or 7 minutes to go. And then it gets down to a spot where they could almost have tied the game. So I lose some of the alternate bets. But if this game had gone to overtime, that's the only way Sweden could have still been alive. Because the other 2 teams owned the tiebreakers with Sweden. They all beat them. But if this game would have gotten to 4-4 overtime, then Sweden would have advanced to the final with a win. And I think the USA totally sits everybody they can. And you want to face Sweden. Well, don't you want to face Sweden again in the final and really stick it to Canada? They don't even make it to the final. Now I think they're just going to take it easy. I don't really know how to approach the game. Maybe you approach it over 6. Just for the fact that there's going to be very little checking. Nobody wants to get hurt in this game. Neither do the Swedes. Right? I mean, they can't advance to the final.
Meaningless game for them.
I don't know. If I either would play over 6 or maybe even take Sweden plus a puck and a half minus 155.
Is there a third place game or no?
No, I don't believe so.
No, okay.
I think the only game is the final game on Thursday in Boston.
Yeah, well, we've seen, and as you're alluded to here, we've seen the Swedes take a little bit of action down here at Circuits, minus 182, plus 165, coming back on the other side. You guys actually, your opening price, it looked like on the screen, was as low as minus 155 for USA. So a little bit of action coming up in that way. Was that accurate? Opener minus 155?
I think it was around there, yes.
Yeah, okay. So at least the thought being, even with some of the backups, or at least the non-focused effort, still priced
the game moved as Canada scored the 2 early goals. That's when we started getting money on the USA, knowing that Sweden couldn't advance.
Interesting. Okay. I like it. Let me ask you, because I wanted to ask, there's a lot of different ways you can look at this, especially when the MVP for the tournament. Did you have any thoughts on what this has looked like here in terms of what the MVP could look like for the four-nation face-off at this point right now? Current odds, Connor McDavid plus 275, Hellebuck at plus 275 as well. Then it goes down to Crosby at 4-1, Gensel at 7-1 and onward, McKinnon at 7-1.
Yeah, I think Hellebuck's is the safest bet right now. I mean, he gives up 1 goal, that McDavid kind of sort of half breakaway there where he just skated by everyone. That was terrific. Gave up a soft goal, but only 1 goal defending him. So he's only given up 1 goal in 2 games, and he'll get his 3rd start against Canada. And, you figure if he gives up 2 goals or less in that game, that he is going to be the MVP. If it's a higher scoring game, then I would, you could bet them both right now, and you still make a profit on it. That's not a bad price on him at plus 275 right now.
All right, can I pick your brain really quick on something?
Sure.
I have nothing. I have one thing in my pocket. I have the Vegas Golden Knights at about 16-1 to win the Stanley Cup final. As I enter now this portion of the calendar where I can actually start to pay attention a little bit more, and I want to start to bet these games and start to look at these futures boards, as we're resetting the NHL season when we come back, what is something worth noting at this point right now with the NHL when it comes from a future standpoint? Anything to buy low on as we enter the home stretch?
Well, when I just address your ticket to begin with, I think that the other teams in the West are vulnerable, and probably the Knights are still gonna move here, right? They normally do. So I think the West is pretty wide open in that regard. Colorado made some trades, but in the end of the day, they get rid of Rantanen, and so I don't think I have a ticket on them. I'm not too happy about it. Can Winnipeg continue to do what they do? Hellebuck's never been great in the playoffs. You know that they've won every game they had a lead after 2 periods. I mean, it's just unheard of.
It seems unsustainable.
It's like when the Vikings won all those games. Right. You're right, all the one possession games, and when it's not, and there's going to be some regression there. You would think. I've been looking a lot at the Maple Leafs in the last few weeks because I keep watching Joseph Woll, and I think Woll is one of these guys that you could put on your back through the playoff. And they haven't done well, and they've got a different voice in Berube there now. So when I look at the East and try to find somebody, I'm against Carolina. Carolina is undervalued every year. I don't know how every year they're the preseason favorite to win the Cup.
So from what I gather, right, Carolina, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, seems like a very analytically sound team, right? Mm-hmm. Like shot share, high danger chances, things like that. And so they grade out really highly. And then we watch them kind of almost every single year, not reach the heights that the market expects. I mean, this last season in the pro season, you kind of saw an example of that. They were kind of priced to the moon in certain instances. And I think a lot of it seems to be that when I looked at them analytically, because they do have a feel for at least what I'm looking at with those numbers, they seem like a team that checks almost every box numerically.
But I have discussions about who are the top coaches in the NHL, and it's Cooper, and then who's number 2. And Brendan Moore always comes into the conversation. And I said, but they don't make it in the playoffs. I mean, I don't know. They're very good in the regular season, and you have to give them – they give a good, consistent effort every night. But they wear down in these 7-game series in the playoffs. And they've been such – they're more a European belt team. And when you get into these physical 7-game series, they really have nothing in the tank left when it comes to the end of it. And I know they've tried to add some more North American style of play. But I don't believe in Freddie Anderson as the number 1. I think his heyday was 7-8 years ago. Actually, I thought he was best when he was in Anaheim, even better than Toronto or now here. So I just don't think they can go a long way. New Jersey's interesting. They were short priced before the year. Very good, but then when Markstrom goes out, they really struggle. It's a big drop-off in goaltending. But if Markstrom's back and healthy, they're interesting. The one thing I say is the Florida's the defending champion, and you're still going to have to beat Florida to win this thing, right? And so when I look at the East, I think it comes down to Florida and Toronto. But Toronto is, I think, where the value is right now. You could argue a little bit Florida because they haven't had a top record here, and they've had some lulls in the season, but they'll be ready to turn it on when the playoff comes.
So the whole Toronto story, narrative, not bothersome?
I tried to bring it up with Jonathan Davis on Friday, right? And he says when Marner and Matthews start hating to lose more than they like to win, that's when Toronto, and he doesn't see that yet. Yeah. Now, those are guys that are very close. Alberga right there, diehard Maple Leafs guys.
Nick's going to be with us 3 p.m. Pacific time, 6 p.m. for those of you on the East Coast to discuss what we're going to see later today and overall in the final on the 20th in the Four Nations face-off. Hey, VSiN fans, time to plan your Vegas getaway. Circle Las Vegas owner Derek Stevens offering you 15% off at 3 incredible properties: Circle Las Vegas, the D Hotel, and Golden Gate. Whether you're lounging by Circa's stunning rooftop pool or enjoying all the excitement Vegas has to offer, you're going to say big. Promo code VSiN15. Book your stay now at circalasvegas.com. Use VSiN15, get 15% off. Vegas Adventure starts here. Remember, circalasvegas.com, code VSiN15. Before we get to Will Hill, really, do you have any good positions on some of these awards?
No, I do have Canada to win it at plus 150. When the market overreacted to the first 2 games, when they went to overtime and the U.S. beat Finland 6-1, I thought the market, they were co-favorites going in, and the market overreacted. So I need Canada on Thursday.
Okay. Feels like maybe an emotional letdown, no? Like you said, that's like the perfect example of being able to get everything go right for you. unless Trump enacts the tariffs here in the next 24 hours, then I think emotionally, right, it's a little bit of a letdown.
It has to be, doesn't it?
It seems like it, especially after playing a meaningless game here and then now having to get ready up on the other side. All right, Will Hill's going to join us coming up here next. His Mets front and center. We heard from Juan Soto, who was not 600 pounds, as many people would like to tell you. The jerseys fit a little snug in the introduction, but he looks good. We'll talk maybe a little bit about his Mets. And, of course, college basketball, short slate tonight, but we have 3 Power 5 teams, 3 Power 5 matchups that are in action later today. And, of course, he is a participant in our College Hoops Challenge on Friday, so we'll have to get his thoughts on how his first weekend went. All of that and more when we come back here on Follow the Money. Don't go anywhere. It's JVT, Mike Palm here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Sports betting game with VSiN's exclusive betting splits. Stay ahead with real-time market trends and track bet percentages on any matchup, then uncover the edge by comparing them to the amount of bets placed to find out where the sharp money is headed. Upgrade to VSiN Pro to access betting splits, live odds, line moves, power ratings, and in-depth game analysis. Go to vsin.com/pro to join VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
This is VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
This is Follow the Money on VSiN.
All right, welcome in. It is Follow the Money. By the way, I was about to do it. Minus 5,000, I call the show by a different name, considering I'm on a few of them. Mike Palm, JVT, we're filling in. Mitch will be back tomorrow. Him and Mike will have the desk. I'll be back throughout the week as well, as we are getting through some of these vacations. But we welcome in our next guest on the Progressive Guest Line, Will Hill. Nice enough to give us some time. We will hit on a little bit of baseball at some point as well. It is the season. But the Circa College Hoops Challenge, Will, you are a contestant. We saw over the weekend the first round of it. How did you do? We have the stands if you want to throw them up for our visual audience. Checking in at 2-2-1. How'd you feel the weekend went for you?
I think that was an appropriate 2-2-1. You know, I had one of my losers was Arizona, and they were up 7 somewhat late in the game. And I don't know if you guys watched the game, and this is always, you're watching this through the prism of your own bets. Maybe there's a little bias, but they're up 7. It looked like they had a steal to go the other way, to go up 9. They called a touch foul. Houston scored to cut it to 5, and Houston kind of dominated the game the rest of the way. Zona had a couple chances down 3. They settled for just kind of prayer threes when they could have just done the old, get a layup and foul. Houston's not great at the line, so I felt like I deserved better with that one. Then part of it's my fault. I took a bad number with Cincy at 11, and I pushed. There was much better numbers out there, everywhere. Other books, different times, things like that. And either way, it still should have gotten home. They were, I don't know if they were outside the number the entire game. There's a technical at the end, so. But the other way to look at it is there was a point Saturday night where I was like, man, I'm going to go winless in this thing. It looked like I was going to go maybe 0-4-1. Texas rallied and covered. That was maybe somewhat fortunate. And, Michigan State was down big against Illinois, and they ended up winning the game comfortably. So you can't say that's like a fortunate beat, but at the first score I saw, they were down maybe 13, 15 points. Didn't feel great about that. So all things considered, 2-2-1 probably deserved like a 2-2-1.
How about Arizona down 4 with 5 seconds? They couldn't even inbound the ball.
I know.
That was brutal. That was brutal. You had a chance to cover there.
And missed a 3, I think, before that. They missed a couple chances, and that's, they're in action again tonight. Houston takes a lot out of you physically, so I wonder if there'll be some after effects of that. But Arizona was in control for a lot of that game. Like I said, up 7 with a chance to go the other way with a steal. Felt like it was in good shape, but was not meant to be.
All right, let's hit on some of these games. And by the way, if we can throw this up one more time for our audience, overall record for everybody in the contest this weekend, 41-33-1. Best bets go 6-9 among the contestants. Mike, you made the comment. David Deneen, the defending champ, 5-0 in the first week. It's funny, we had him on Friday night, and we were kind of, hey, David, what are you looking at? He goes, I haven't put my picks in yet. And would not tell us what he was doing. And sure enough, 5-0, maybe for a reason. 5.5 points in your leader right now in the defending champs. All right, 3 games tonight, Will. Let's start with the first one. ACC, Duke at Virginia. Duke beats up on Stanford. What do we make of them hitting the road now? Take on Virginia. Right now, numbers 14, total of 132 here at Circa. Do you go side, do you go total, or do you go somewhere else?
Yeah, it's gotten bet down a little bit. I saw some 15s earlier in the day. So somebody's betting Virginia. I can understand that. That's a lot of points to be laying on the road in a conference game. I'm going to go. I think there's some 59s out there in terms of the team total. DraftKings is 58.5. I'm going to go Virginia team total under 59. I guess you were telling me during the break, Jim Root, our buddy, our fellow contestant in this contest, is on the same thing. Be curious to hear his handicap on that, on this. But probably the same sort of thinking where did the points come for Virginia? Maybe Duke, they don't have an appetite to cover this number. They do have Illinois on deck on Saturday, which is kind of a random out-of-conference big matchup for this late in the season. Usually you don't get too many of these late in the season, so maybe it's a look-ahead spot for Duke. But, okay, Virginia can hit some threes. They're shooting 38% just about for the season. But I would think Duke would have an emphasis on closing out on shooters and really make them score inside, make them go inside, because there's not a lot of size. There's not a lot of scoring ability inside. The one true big Virginia plays is Buchanan, who's 6'11", but he only averages 5 points a game. He's not a scorer. So I just don't see a path for offense here for Virginia. It's not the typical, Bennett team that we've seen in the past. Obviously, he's not the coach anymore. It's a little bit, they play a little faster, but they're still going to play slow. They're still going to struggle to score here. So I will go the team total under here with the Cavs.
Will, you mentioned about Arizona playing Houston Saturday and Houston grinding you down. I certainly think they did grind Caleb Love down during the course of that game. And the after effects the next game, they travel to Waco to take on the Baylor Bears tonight. Baylor tied for 5th in the Big 12 right now. They are 12-1 at home this year. A short home favorite, 1.5 with a total 151.5.
Yeah, I'm going to take Baylor. I just took them on the money line. I think minus 120 is pretty widely available. I just think it's a situational play. Arizona, when you play Houston, they just it's almost like who was it earlier this year in football? I think it was the Lions, where everyone who played the Lions never covered the next week. And he said, all right, these trends, you can find a lot of trends. Doesn't mean they mean anything. But Detroit was physical before they had all these injuries on offensive line, the defensive line. I think it's a similar sort of thing when you play Houston. Houston, they grind you. They're tough. It's just that's a tough 40 minutes when you play Houston. Now you throw in the fact that some travel here, where you go from Arizona Saturday to Waco, Texas on a Monday night. That's a quick turnaround, a physical game. I think, like I said, that they really kind of collapsed down the stretch. Is that a negative carryover to the next game? I'm sure if you're betting Arizona, you say, oh, it's a good spot. They're going to be motivated. I'm not so sure it's a good spot. I think this is a tough spot, actually. I'm going to go with Baylor here just based on the situation.
Before we move on to baseball, and Will Hill with us here at Not the Will Hill, VSiN contributor. Any thoughts on Kansas State making the Utah swing on the road here? Markets moved up to 3 in favor of the Utes, total 148.
No. What is it? It's Utah laying 2.5 to Kansas State?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
3 now.
It'd be anything. If it would anything be Kansas State, that was a disappointment. I thought Kansas State would be more competitive against BYU on Saturday. That was almost the game I actually end up taking in the contest. They got blown out start to finish. It'd be Kansas State or nothing for me. I do think they've played much better in general the past 6 or 7 weeks. Bunch of top 25 wins. Maybe they were just kind of due to cool off and lose to BYU, and they bounce back tonight. This is always a tough swing, when you're playing back-to-back games in altitude. So it's not a great situation, but it would be a lean towards the Wildcats, who are. I would imagine. I haven't looked at the Lunardi updated projected brackets. I'm sure they're right on the bubble, one of the last 4 in or out. I'm sure there's not too much breathing room for them either way right now.
Before we go to baseball, one more game. I guess because it's an odd situation. I don't know if you made anything out of the handicap of it. You and I were supposed to play Murray State yesterday, and there was a rainstorm there, and lightning struck the campus in Kentucky. And so they had to move the game, power outage. They had to move the game to today in Nashville. Not Bridgestone, but they're actually playing on Belmont's home court. The number moved a half point from 1.5 to 2 here at Circa. You and I laying 2, 135.
If anything, I guess I would just take the under. It's probably going to be a dead crowd, an unfamiliar gym. If anything, it would be the under. But yeah, that is an unusual one. I think that was supposed to be last night. I was doing the show. We were talking about that, and then eventually it just disappeared from the board. Like, where did that game go? And we were trying to research what happened. So nothing for me there. I'll give you an extra one, though. Southeast Louisiana's playing McNeese, getting 8.5. McNeese has not covered these big numbers. I think 6, 7 in a row they haven't covered. I remember last year they went to the tournament and they were everybody's kind of sleeper pick against Gonzaga. Gonzaga just ran them out of the building. I don't know if they're going to be as popular a pick this year, but that they're a powerhouse in that conference. It's just those lines are inflated so much. Southeast Louisiana is not bad, 17-9. So 8.5 seems like a lot of points. That would be another one I would take, if anything. Light card tonight, though.
Yeah, it's not really great, but there's some good ones. There's some diamonds in the rough. So let's transition over to baseball. The last couple of minutes with you here. I'll let you go wherever you want to go. Board is up. Win totals are up. Futures, what do you got so far?
I'll keep it simple. Reds and Red Sox. I think the Reds with Francona, adding Brady Singer to the mix, getting Spencer Steer back. If you look back last year, I think they outscored their opponents. They had some really bad luck in one-run games. That's a division where, there's no Dodgers, there's no Mets, there's no Phillies. I know you got your Cubs there who've had a nice offseason, and the Brewers always do more with less. But I could see the Reds with Francona taking a major leap forward. I like their pitching. There's some power there. We'll see if De La Cruz takes another step. I think the Reds could be contenders here. I think 5-1 to win a division. They've gotten bet a little bit, but to me, the Reds are a little bit of, to use your term, a diamond in the rough. I think there's some potential there. And the Red Sox, I hate to say it as a Yankee fan, but you had Crochet, you had Walker Buehler, who seemed to find something the last 5-6 weeks of the season and into the playoffs. You add Bregman, who I think will do well in that ballpark. Now there's whispers they might trade for Dylan Cease. Cora is a good manager. That's a good home field advantage where they always score runs. And plus, I don't know if people realize they've got a lot of prospects from the years of futility here. Marcelo Meyer, some of these other guys, where those guys could either help middle of the season, be trade chips. To me, in an American League that's really kind of watered down, I think you can make a case 6 of the 7, maybe 7 of the 8 best teams are in the National League. The Red Sox being a playoff team, I think that's the safest way to play, like minus 120 to make the playoffs. If you want to go further, I think 25-1 on the futures board, something like that. I think the Red Sox are in for a good year here.
Well, I push back a little bit just about the starting pitching staffs, and I love the Francona move. I mean, like Hunter Green is the Anthony Davis of Major League Baseball. He can't stay healthy the whole year. And then when I look at the Red Sox staff, I don't mind your bet to make the playoffs. But they're going to have to get more innings than these guys have pitched before out of these starters, right? There are a lot of guys that give you 150, 155 innings that you're going to need 180 out of.
Yeah, and to go back to your Reds point, Lodolo's another guy, really good, always hurt. So a lot of things are going to have to align. But if you're getting 5-1 for a division where you only might need 90 wins to win a division, we'll see what happens. I'm so excited to have it back soon. It's just it's a great time of year once we get it back.
Will, always good to talk to you, buddy. Thank you very much for the time today.
All right, see you guys. Thanks for having me.
And Navi Will Hill, Should Have Bet More podcast, joining us here on the Progressive Guest Line. Let's build on the Red Sox thing because I got my questions about Boston. We'll talk about that when we come back.
It's a good.
Elevate your sports betting game with VSiN's exclusive betting splits. Stay ahead with real-time market trends and track bet percentages on any matchup, then uncover the edge by comparing them to the amount of bets placed to find out where the sharp money is headed. Upgrade to VSiN Pro to access betting splits, live odds, line moves, power ratings, and in-depth game analysis. Go to vsin.com/pro to join VSiN, the sports betting network.
This is Follow the Money on VSiN.
All right, I am fired up because I do really enjoy the grind of the baseball season. It's right around the corner. It's going to be a ton of fun. Now, I'll probably hate myself because I'm in a dynasty league that, is run very well, because I think the guy might listen to and watch the network, but it's run very well. It's absolutely fantastic. But I do kind of hit my head on the wall throughout the season. So I'm fired up, and we're starting to see guys out there, right? Guys in new teams being introduced. So when I was on Follow the Money last week, we got the news that Alex Bregman had signed with the Boston Red Sox. We talked about the deal. I think it's a little much, especially when you're talking about this guy coming off of the year that he did as a 30-year-old. But we finally heard from Bregman. So let's hear from him. Listen to the jubilation, Mike. He's joining a special group of guys that are all in it together.
It's good to be here. I've been fortunate enough to be in the playoffs the first 8 years of my career, and I plan on continuing to do that here. I'm a winning player. This is a winning organization. Those players are winning players. We have winning coaches here, and I plan on winning here. After talking with some of the guys over the last 2 days, I can see that there's something special here. Franchise players, veteran players, young players, all ready to get after it.
All ready to get after it. Bunch of special guys coming into a clubhouse that gets it. Think you'd be excited. Paul was excited about it. And I can understand it, right? Team was on the service. What?
I go on 670 The Score every Friday morning, and the Cubs fans are all upset they didn't land him. I said, count your lucky stars that you didn't pay this guy $120 million.
Yep.
This is Trevor's story, too, to me.
Sure, and with options for it's his option every single year. So, that's part of the problem is if the decline happens, and as I told Paul, you look back at his numbers from this last year. Walk rate was the lowest it's been. On-base percentage was the lowest it's been. It's almost in the entirety of his career lows across the board. And when you talk about a guy that's 30, you don't really love it. Now, maybe your floor is raised by the park that you play in, and obviously the way that you swing the bat, that you're going to be helped out there. But I wanted to build on this aspect of these star players, right? This camaraderie that we're talking about, because that was my initial thought too. Is well, wait a minute, Alex Bregman, he plays third base, doesn't he? Who plays third base for the Boston Red Sox?
I think Rafael Devers.
I think he does too. And then we got news today, and we heard it from Devers. Not even news. He was asked essentially, "Hey, would you move to DH?" Simple answer: No. I've already told him what I want. No. So here's why we wanted to bring this up, because an hour after we hear from Devers, who says flat out he refuses to change positions, will not do it, here's what Alex Cora had to say about the move.
Like I said a few days ago, decisions are going to be made here about, roster construction and what we're going to do in the future, and we're going to make sure we have the best team possible out there, and he has a lot of pride. We know that, and he feels like he's a third baseman. He's going to work out as a third baseman, and then we're going to make decisions accordingly, But I think here it's not about Bregman or Devers or Cora. It's about the Red Sox, right? And whatever decision we make is for the benefit of the team.
I will say I like Alex Cora a lot. I think he's the man. I think he's a very good manager. So if there's a situation like this is probably one of the guys that I would pick to handle it. But your thoughts now that we have this dynamic to a team that I do think has some flaws that we should address as well.
Well, when the hunt for Bregman was out there and we saw the offers coming in for X years, I said, and everybody made the Red Sox the favorite, Devers is not moving. That's his position there. Bregman's going to have to play another position, whatever it's going to be. So this didn't surprise me at all what Devers said. He's the incumbent. Second thing, we're coming to a team full of winners. They made the playoffs once since 2018 and not in the last 4 seasons. All these very special winners, right? It's a very low period in this century for the Red Sox, and they've got to learn to win again. They put together a staff. Now, I get it, Crochet's on the up here, and the White Sox kind of shut him down at the end. But the average amount of innings pitched in this staff last year was less than 140, and you add them all up, and you got 2 guys that you added, Buehler and Giolito, who are far from the peaks of their careers. One might say this could be their last stop, or I don't know that they're going to make it all the way through the season. You're going to need to get more out of Bello. I do like Houck. I do think Houck is. I think Houck's clearly the best pitcher on that staff. Crochet still has to develop into a pitcher. And when I look at this lineup, you got a lot of guys hitting under 240. Okay, and I get it. It's a new league where 245 is the average. But you can't, after you get through the 4th place hitter, have everybody under 240 and generate runs. You're giving away too many innings here. So I think that they've got to take steps forward, and I don't think Bregman, while the park he's a good fit for, he hits very well in that park, and it's one of the few where he won't be exposed by because he will have a longer fence and left. I'm not all in on this team now suddenly becoming a wild card team.
Yeah, and so team profile for them too. You look at it, win total of 86.5. They're essentially a pick, slightly shaded to the yes side to make the playoffs. These numbers I'm listing off courtesy of DraftKings. 425 to win the division, 10-1 to win the American League, 22-1 to win the World Series. I would agree with that. And one of the things that you and I brought up too, which I brought up to Paul a little bit, was, is this infield defense going to get any better? If you watched them last year, you know how many games that they blew? People talked about the bullpen. A big part was this infield defense couldn't field the ground ball. They were awful at times, abysmal at times. And it was one of the big reasons why they failed to make out of the postseason. So that's one of the big things, too, is how much better are you going to be playing defense? And then you zoom out and you talk about how, look, like I like the Baltimore Orioles under their win total, but they're still going to be a very good and formidable team. You still have the Yankees that are going to be there as well. An American League overall that I think has some pretty solid depth to it. I'm not entirely sure I'm all in on this Red Sox train, considering what this could be. And God forbid Bregman actually is starting to decline and really show some of the true warts that we saw in some of his numbers last year.
No, it's a tough division. It's a make or break year for Snyder and the Blue Jays as well. He's got a lot of pressure on him. And the Rays, no matter what lineup they put out there, play over 500. They just win. They just win. Even in years they're trying to give it away and selling off, they still are a 500 team. So I think it's a big ask. I know the American League is more interesting to bet because you don't have all these power teams, and you feel like it's Yankees and then pick the next team and that has value. It's a bridge too far for me. I'm on the Rangers, by the way. On bounce back on the Rangers. Yeah, I do. I think the Rangers are very live in the West and they're getting overlooked.
The West is. I would agree with you because I feel like the Astros might be taking a small step back here.
Well, I definitely think they are. The Mariners led the league in ERA, missed the playoffs, and did nothing to get any more hitting. I mean, I don't understand what they were doing.
I don't understand what they've been doing for a while, even at the trade deadline. Like, okay, like what was it a Rosarena and one other piece that I can't remember? Turner.
A Rosarena was the big move.
Like, I don't know what we're doing here at this point. You're wasting these arms that you have.
I asked this question, John, to people because I think it's interesting. If you could draft the 5 pitch starters for Seattle, in what order would you draft them? I think it's an interesting question.
Sure.
And it's not Castillo because of his age, right? I mean, if you could add them to your team right now, for me, it's Kirby. I think Kirby has the most upside. I don't know that he's learned to pitch yet. And then it's probably Logan Gilbert second. And if Wu could stay healthy, they have such a talented starting 5.
Oh, Wu! I mean, Wu's. It's interesting too because Wu completely changed. When he came up, you thought he was going to be like a strikeout machine, and then he seems like he's very talented because now all of a sudden he's pitching to contact, working his way through lineups, doing the smart thing, and he still I think has the strikeout stuff. When you look at him, like you guys last year before the season started, I know this because I lost on it. He was like 750 to 1 to lead the league in strikeouts because I thought like, hey, if you looked at his profile, especially in the minors, this guy has the ability to mow him down. Maybe he starts to become that, but I would generally agree with you when you talk about it. Kirby was also a bet that I lost. I had him before the season, like 25 to 1 to win the AL Cy Young. And I think that's something I still might go back on because you're talking about a guy who's just barely turned 27, who's got an awesome arsenal, and who could totally be, when we talk about the end of the year, the best pitcher on this staff by the time we get to the end of 2025.
Like 1 out of 5 starts, he's got a no-hitter through 5 or 6, right? I mean, that's how good this guy's stuff is.
Yep. No, I would completely agree. But to your point, too, about the AL West as a whole, we got the news today, too. Mike Trout's going to move to right field, so they're probably going to try to promote his longevity. They've been signing a whole bunch of old guys for a team that has some of the worst injury history you're going to see in injury variants ever. But Yohan Moncada is going to come in and play third base and save everybody, I'm sure. But you look at it overall, there's not that much depth to it. Plucky A's, the Sacramento A's might be pretty good on a night-to-night basis, but not going to win a ton of games.
Do you look at any A's to lead the league in home runs playing in that AAA park in Sacramento?
It's got to be something, right?
Right? Take a few shots there?
Sure. I think it's totally – I mean, because you look at that, or, I mean, you're not going to play a ton of games out there, but you would think some of these AL West guys obviously going to get boosted by playing some more road games out there too, which will help you out as well. Hey, folks, go to the Apple App Store, Google Play Store. Make sure you check out the VSiN Watch app. You can watch and listen to show replays. It's how I watch the network. Early this morning, I was watching Joe and Kelly recap the All-Star game. Where was Joe? Joe was not here. I guess he had car trouble again, huh? That's bad. That's a bad beat.
He did. Something with the tires.
Yeah. Can Joe, by the way, you can watch all this on the VSiN Watch app. Check it out now. Show replays and everything. I was going to ask a question can Joe change a tire? How many people can change a tire?
I have changed a tire before.
I think you'd be surprised about the amount of people that cannot change a tire.
Because they got AAA. They just call.
Lazy. I mean, I've changed many a tire in my life.
On his way out here like 10 years ago, didn't Hoops totally had 2 flats or whatever, and he changed both tires and barely made it to Vegas?
How did you have 2 spares?
I don't know. It's some incredible story of It's like our parents walking to school uphill both ways, 10 miles.
in the snow, in the snow, in the heat.
Incredible story.
Barefoot every single time.
They were never late, though.
Yep. All right. As Paul Nelson checks in, a blind man can see what the Mariners are doing, keeping the cash in their pockets. Would pretty much agree there, Paul. But come on, you got something. You got to do something with it. All right. We'll take a break. Come back. Second hour already. We are going to cover a lot here. We got to get to, of course, back to college hoops. A lot to get to, and a card tonight that does have some interesting spots. We'll discuss when we return here on Follow the Money.
And we're out.
Okay, give me 1 sec. I need to load funds into my gaming apps.
Stormy, really? With a credit card?
Well, with my credit card from GBank, they don't treat gaming transactions as cash advances. Plus, you get